Hey, how's it going, everybody? This is Jason here again. It's been probably close to 3 weeks since my last video upload. I took a couple of weeks off. Sorry for not giving everybody a heads up, for anybody that actually follows this channel. I spent my 35th birthday in Cancun for 9 days, 8 nights, yeah, at a resort, just relaxing, enjoying some much needed solo rest and relaxation time. Plenty of drinking, but that's welcome to a vacation, right? But it was kind of nice. It actually enabled me. It was a lot nicer than I thought it would be going solo. Normally, when I take vacations, I end up usually going with someone else, at least one other person. I'm not generally a big fan of doing solo vacations, especially for long periods of time. And for me, 9 days is a decent amount of time, to say the least. But this time I decided to pull the trigger and just go. And it was really interesting. The first couple of days were actually pretty rough. A lot of wallowing and like dissatisfaction with the fact that none of my friends who I had invited actually showed up. Yeah, I think that's the right way to put that. But after a couple of days, the first 2 days actually, so I got in Friday on my birthday, the 2nd, and ended up getting to the hotel, getting in, relaxing, enjoying the beach, drinking, doing dinner, the whole nine. And then Saturday was really my kind of like dissatisfaction day, if you will, right? I still made the best of it, obviously, because I was in Cancun and not a beach, basically, with all-inclusive resorts. So, I mean, it's dissatisfaction is like, in comparison to how far that can go. But after the second day, starting kind of midday Sunday on the third day I was there, well, the second full day I was there, I started actually like having a lot of fun. Not in the traditional sense like going and doing, because my goal was not to do that. Actually, my goal was to just sit and rest. But I started realizing at about that point, maybe Monday, that what I had normally considered to be rest wasn't really rest. So like I can sit and not do things for a while, which is good, right? I mean, everybody should strive to be able to do that. But what I've found, and I never really stopped and like analyzed it much, but what I found was while I was in Cancun, the rest just kind of hit different. So I was thinking about that for a while, and what I found was that there's rest here, right, at home, or in the city, or like wherever you're going, is very different than when you're away, right? So here, when I'm at home and I'm resting and like I'm not being busy, if you will, I don't know if rest's the right way to put that, but I'm constantly like jumping back and forth in my head between distractions, whether that's videos on TV, whether that's movies, whether that's songs, whether that's like just messing around the internet, whether that's playing games, whatever the case may be. Sometimes it's reading, sometimes it's swimming, sometimes it's working out. Like there's a litany of things that I do just naturally in my brain, I guess, to keep myself distracted. And I kind of focused on that a decent amount when I was in Cancun. It was like, okay, why is the rest here in, this is me thinking while I was in Cancun, why is this rest different, right? And the answer to that was actually pretty simple. I was in a different location. I had a TV, but it was kind of just there, right? Like for the first like half of the trip, the TV remote didn't really work. I couldn't control volume. I couldn't turn it on or off. Like I was pretty limited with the functionality there, which honestly, I had really no interest in TV for the most part anyway while I was there, so I was like, okay, sure, whatever. And then, like, I had my cell phone, but, like, cell phone with Wi-Fi, I mean, there's only so much time out of the day you can spend in your room surfing the internet, right? And then I had my personal laptop, but I had told myself before I left that outside of, like, if I wanted to watch a movie, I wasn't going to use my laptop for anything unless absolutely necessary. And I actually maintained that the whole trip, which was great. So I kind of had like self-imposed limiters, right? And then on top of that, I had the self-imposed limitation of I'm in Cancun for 9 days, right? Like you don't go there, and at least I didn't go there to just spend the whole time fucking around on my phone. That's just not what I was there for. I was there to rest and relax, right? And just kind of process and think things through and generally just get a better understanding of myself and, well, relax, for lack of a better word. You know, I'm using that word a lot in this video, but I mean, that's really was the point of that entire trip. But it's really interesting because once I got back, right, I realized like just how vastly different everything was upon my return than it was when I left, just from a perspective standpoint, right? There were a lot of things that I had naturally just accepted as, oh, this is the way things are before I left, right, and historically, whereas when I was gone for 9 days and actually rested up and relaxed and kind of reset that barometer a little bit, that when I came back, I was like, hey, like all of this crap really actually bothers me, right? So I had to kind of deal with that and like reanalyze and reprocess a lot of those things and see if, okay, is this actually something that I'm okay with or and willing to accept, or is this something that I need to make a dramatic shift on? Because those were kind of the two like more action points, if you will. But I was sitting there and I was like, I kept getting like bothered almost, right? It was just that little nagging feeling in the back of my brain about why is my brain, like why am I mentally so much more active, right? Even when I'm not trying to be, or even when I'm trying not to be, why am I so much more active here? And I was sitting there and I did a new, like, I'm testing out a new idea. So I have a notebook that I finally started figuring out topics, and I'm just kind of like brainstorming on. And one of the things that kind of came up as an underlying theme, if you will, when I was thinking about this topic of rest and just kind of working through it, was the underlying question basically, essentially, is why am I putting myself in a position while I'm here to have all of these distractions? Like, what is it that I'm utilizing the distractions for? Kind of what is their purpose? So I dug into that a little bit, and what I realized is, at first, what I thought it was, and I'm going to use my notes here for this, what I first thought it was that I was actually scared of who I would be if I stopped all of the distractions. And, like, that didn't really fit. So, like, as you're thinking things through, one of the ways that I do it is I just kind of start mind to paper, if you will, right? And if I'm writing, it's mind to paper. If not, I'm just kind of like talking through it, or I'm just like letting my brain just kind of run. But it's essentially just hypothesis testing. It's really all it was. So at first I thought it was like, okay, is it that I'm scared of who I'd be if I stopped all the distractions, right? Kind of like remove the distractions and see who I'm capable of actually becoming, right? And am I scared of what I estimate that would look like? And after some thought, I was like, no, I'm really not. Like, it's not really a fear type thing, and it's not really a concern for who I would be, because I know myself well enough to know that if I were to pull the trigger and remove the distractions and like remove, if you will, the clutter from my life, whether that's people or things or like video games or movies or whatever the case may be, right? If I were to remove a lot of the clutter from my life, who I would be would just be for my estimation, a little bit more of a peer version of who I am, right? Which is a good thing. But at the same time, like, distractions kind of have their place. So like, how do you balance that? That's always the question, right? As they say, the devil's always in the details. So I was like, okay, so that doesn't really fit. But if that doesn't fit, then I kind of had to go back to the drawing board and shift the way I actually looked at the question. All right, so it's like, okay, if I'm not afraid of, or scared, or worried even about who I would be if I stopped all these distractions, then why do I innately, right? It's not really a conscious decision, it's just something I do. Why do I constantly surround myself with distractions or allow things to be suboptimal, right? That you could take that many different ways, you can put that in many different forms, but essentially that's kind of what it breaks down to. And what I realized, and I'm still kind of working through this, I don't know if this is going to be the final bar or the final like rationale and reasoning behind it, but it's close. It's in the general ballpark. Is I'm not afraid of who I would be. It's more so a and I wrote it down, so give me a second. I'm more so worried about what and who I would lose, right? So if I got rid of most of the distractions in my life, and by consequence of doing that, it's going to naturally enable and kind of force, in a way, me to actually stop and truly like ponder a lot of things in my life, right? Which I generally do anyway, but it would just, if it was like a 7 now, it would ramp it to a 10, or if it was a 6 now, it would ramp it to like a 9, you know? It would only ramp up what I'm doing now more, which can be good, but it can also, you know, everything kind of comes at a cost. So I was sitting here and I'm like, okay, to test that hypothesis, what am I really, like, what could I potentially, like, what could be the potential impact of removing those distractions? Okay, I could figure out things like, and this is an area that I've talked about previously on other videos, one of the first things, my estimation, that I would end up adjusting would be how I view my friendships with people and what I'm willing to accept and what I'm not, right? Because with all the distractions, I'm able to like kind of shift off of that topic every once in a while, and it's not right front and center. And that was the very first thing that popped into my head, was that would be the first thing, almost guaranteed that would be the first thing that my brain would immediately grab onto and go, full stop, this. So I was like, okay, well, what is it about that instinctively just, maybe not instinctively, but I don't know the right word for that. It's just like up front, what is it about that I would be losing, right? So I started breaking down, okay, in order to figure that out and what that could potentially look like, to really truly understand, I ended up writing down essentially a two-sided list, right? So I put on the one column, I put a list of every single one of the people that I consider friends in my life. Okay, that's a decent list. It's like 20 people, give or take. Actually, I don't remember how long it is. I've got it here, but I'm not even going to bother counting it. But it's a decent list. And then on the other side, I put a list of all of the things that I truly value in a friendship. Okay, and it's not an exhaustive list. Neither of these are exhaustive lists. They're point in time estimations based on what I could come up with when I was doing it. So I was sitting there, right, and I wrote these things out, and then I went through the list of the people one at a time, and I broke it all down, and I'm like, okay, based on the criteria in column B, for the person A in column A, or person 1 in column A, if you will, do they have all of the criteria that I have in column B? And any ones that were missing, I put a tack or a dash and then the numbers that were missing. And I went all the way through the entire list. And any person that was on that list that had all of those qualities, right? And not necessarily just had them like innately as to who they are, but had them and showed that in the context of our friendship. I circled them, okay? And it was kind of interesting, right? Because what it showed me is that out of all the people I consider friends, there are only 5 of them, 5, that meet the criteria that I would set for people actually being my friend. Okay. And that was interesting, right? And 5 is actually a pretty solid amount. So I'm grateful for that. I genuinely am grateful for that. But one of the things that also kind of popped out after I was done and just kind of looked over it holistically was there were two specific items and standards, if you will, that I had set as in my list for column B, that every person that did not classify as did not earn a circle basically in that friendship, that they didn't have everything. It was essentially, if they didn't have everything in the list, there were one of two or both on the list that had failed. Right? Failed isn't the right term. It wasn't there. Right? One of them was, let me get this right. So give me just a second here. One of them was that they put in effort into the friendship, okay, and not just absolute minimal, right? Like they're committed to the friendship or the relationship, okay. Meaning they reach out, they're willing to step into the arena first, if you will, and then let me follow suit from time to time. I don't mind putting in effort. I've never had a problem with that, but it's got to go a little bit both ways, right? And then the other one was whether or not I could look at that person and our relationship and go, this person has my back, right? And every single person, and I genuinely mean every single person that didn't measure full success failed on at least one, and the vast majority of them failed on both. Okay, and I'm still kind of working through and processing this, that list, and I'll run through it multiple times, and I'll revamp it, and I'll add to it and remove things, and that's just kind of the nature of it. But one of the questions that I have, right, that eventually I'll think through and kind of really drive to ground is, what is it about those two, and are they actually linked, right? Because it seems to me that putting in effort in a relationship is pretty primary, right? Like, you could have a lot of the other qualities that I list, but it's not really a friendship or a relationship if you're not putting in the effort to maintain it and grow it, right? Just in general, which is really puts a lot for me into perspective on how things kind of play out, right? But it was really interesting because I had started out this video talking about rest, right? And one of the things that ties this all together for me is that I never would have actually thought about resting being connected to distractions, which is being connected to standards, and my concern for losing the people and even things, right? Like gaming consoles, etc., right? But all of those things are kind of interconnected because of my underlying concern for, if I make the adjustments that I need to make to get solid rest and truly to relax, I have to be willing to accept that some of those things that I have held dear for a long time and some of those things that I have enjoyed for a long time will very likely fade away into nothing, right? So this kind of comes back to a topic I've talked about previously in one of my other videos. I'm pretty certain I did anyway, is every time you reanalyze something in your life, right, and you think you figure something out, and then you take it and you apply it, right? There's a part of you that dies when you do that, and a new part is born. So that's kind of as far as I've gotten on it so far. But if you have any thoughts on any of this, or if you have any topics you'd like me to touch on, please feel free to drop a comment below. I'm always interested in interesting conversations. So with that, I think I'm going to end it here. Hopefully you all have had a great weekend and enjoy. Take care.